Welcome to Nothing But Dicta, the podcast where everyone has an opinion and you get to hear it. I'm Sahara Tassi. Today we're speaking with Paul Pompeo, a government contracts law expert who is currently a partner at Arnold & Porter. Mr. Pompeo, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for the invitation.
You've had a very successful career, and law students always want to know how successful lawyers figured out what they wanted to do. How did you decide to specialize in government contracts?
I think that the specialized practice area tends to be more happenstance than strategy. But I will say that it ended up being a combination of both. To be honest, I went into law school not really knowing what the practice of law really was. I come from a family where I was actually the first one to go to college in my entire extended family, let alone go to law school. So I didn't come from a background of professionals where I would have had a better sense. My going into government contract law really was just a matter of how things unfolded when I graduated law school. The first job that I got was also during a recession, and I ended up getting a job with one of the boards of contract appeals, which are the tribunals that decide government contract cases. It was the equivalent of a judicial clerkship, but with an administrative body. And that gave me the groundwork in government contracts. And so what I did was, since it was limited, as clerkships are, when it was time to start interviewing when that was wrapping up, I specifically marketed myself to law firms that specialized in government contract. As a very junior attorney, I had this very unique credential and was valuable in that space. Also, I had already started working on an LL.M. government contracts. I was doing that at night. So in a very short time after graduating law school, I had built that up. That allowed to get a job offer, which I accepted from what at the time was one of the two premier law firms that did government contract law. So I had a lot of experience in that space because I was working at a firm where you had a large diet in the subject matter. As to the other point that I was making on the strategy side, so the first part was just happenstance. It happened to be this was the first job. And I think that's what happens with most lawyers is what's the first kinds of assignments that they get when they are an associate at a firm or their first job or if they're in the government, whatever it is that you get. Within a couple of years, it became apparent to me that there was a specialized need within government contract law that was not going to go away. And it wasn't one that was terribly sexy or interesting to a lot of people, but I recognized that there was a need and it was never going to be going away. And so I volunteered to do that kind of work that all of the other associates were running from. And that built up an opportunity to get specialized experience in that area. Falling into it and having been in it a long time isn't the only key to success. You actually have to be dedicated to it, and you have to also market yourself in the space to be recognized. You have to be successful. I've won a lot of major cases in this space.
You mentioned that you got an LL.M. in government contracts from GW. For current students considering earning an advanced degree, how would you say it helped your career?
I would say it was valuable for me early on. You all are at GW, and it's the one law school that has government contracts law program. Because of not having had that in my JD program, and although I was learning about government contracts through the clerkship, it wasn't giving me the broader perspective. And so I thought it would be valuable. It helped me in the sense of getting a better understanding quickly rather than what you learn as you go. And it also helped me credential-wise when I was looking to move from the clerkship into a firm by saying, hey, I have got this unique experience of being at this tribunal that deals with government contracts. And by the way, I'm partway through an LL.M. in this. So I'm going to be coming in to your firm at a much higher level of understanding than somebody who is a contemporary of mine in terms of years out of school. After a while, I don't think people really care if you have an LL.M. or not.
I understand you're on Arnold & Porter's hiring committee, and in that capacity, you interview candidates. Do you have any advice for students on how to stand out in the interview process?
And so, of course, as I'm talking about hiring, these are all my own impressions, and we shouldn't attribute any of this as being a requirement of the firm. To stand out, it's about experience. It's amazing to me when I look at resumes, I'm like dumbfounded about the opportunities that a lot of people have. I certainly wouldn't have had those kinds of things on my resume when I was in my early 20s, interesting and amazing internships, and they've lived abroad, done this or that, but those things that can distinguish you in terms of life experience are going to be helpful. And the other thing that I think is really important is a true sense of interest in the practice areas that the firm you are interested in joining is known for. So whether it's Arnold or someplace else, we have life sciences and antitrust practice and environmental and, obviously the government contracts, white collar, so on and so forth. I think it's always a difficult thing when you're coming out of law school, or especially when you're only finished your first year, to know, I want to do X. But unfortunately, that's what people are looking for. They want to know that you're coming to this firm because you're interested in a particular subject matter, and it's something that we do, and that's part of what's going to make a fit. And then largely, it's how you gel as a person in the interview process. We all have different personalities. I will say if you are an introverted or shy person, you got to just buckle down and try to find your inner extrovert, because people who come across more confident and feeling comfortable about just like talking and having a conversation with the other person at the table goes a long way.
This is all really helpful, especially for me as a 2L going into OCI in the next couple months. A slight pivot. We've talked a lot about your experience at Arnold & Porter, but I understand that you've also worked in-house.
You were vice president and general counsel for a division of Johnson Controls. How do you think in-house counsel is different from working at a big law firm?
Oh, it's hugely different. When you're in-house, you're much more of a business person. Now, I caveat that because I would say that to be successful in a law firm, I think you have to be business-minded as well. My skill set as a lawyer improved dramatically after having been in-house, because I had a better appreciation for what the client really needed, having been one. Especially in that role, in a little bit more of a senior role, you are working from, standing on your feet, because you're dealing with a broader range of questions. The division that I was responsible for was the government contract division, so obviously my specialized expertise was necessary. But we also were a company, so we dealt with employment issues, everything across the sun. Somebody comes in and said, we have squatters on the front of the property. Somebody's writing checks to themselves, So you're covering all kinds of crazy things, not just one subject area. So you do have to learn to be more versatile, but you also have to quickly learn how to be able to provide advice and counsel to your internal clients on a very snippet kind of basis. People don't need some big analysis. The most I was doing in-house was writing letters. I did oversee outside counsel and frequently edited things, but the skill set is different, and the ability to function in a more rapid fire way, I think, is what you get out of being successful in-house. And I think that that's as great of an option, and it has other benefits than going to a law firm, because I've spent most of my career I've been at 3 large law firms now, and it can get trying. So I would definitely advocate, if people are thinking about going in-house, I think in the long term, especially economically, your benefits can be better in terms of the fact that, you get all the benefits that a company gets, but also if it's publicly held, when you become more senior, you can get some kind of equity as well. If money is what you're looking for, don't think that it's only going to happen at a law firm. And the way to do it at a firm is much more stressful, I think, than being in-house.
So what we've been learning from some of our podcast guests is that often have musical interests that they pursue outside of their working hours. I understand that you sing. Can you tell us a little bit about how music enriches your life?
On the one hand, one of the things I really like about the practice of law is it's very intellectually challenging. And I think I wouldn't be happy if I wasn't doing something that was going to challenge me. And on the other hand, it's extraordinarily stressful. Whether it's music or otherwise, you need these other outlets. But with music, for me, that's the kind of thing that was just a natural talent. I'm not an artist. I'm not on sports teams or something like that. So when I was an associate, I started singing with symphonic choruses, and I sang with some of the most renowned choruses in the country, including here in D.C. That was an outlet. And I think it's important to be able to do that because you need outlets. You need to have other things in life. Being in choruses, it was a way of developing a community that was outside of the practice of law.
Well, Mr. Pompeo, thank you so much for your time today. We've learned a lot.
Thanks so much.
And to our listeners, we hope you'll tune in next time for another episode of Nothing But Dicta.